Hello everyone, and welcome to MUP Halo, or as the Shangheili say, What. That's what we're going with. that's the dad joke for the pod. I'm Wiki Dave, and I'm here with James. How are you doing, James?
I'm good. Happy New Year, listeners.
Yes, Happy New Year indeed. This is the first Halo pod of the year, and hopefully the one of many. It's going to be a very interesting year for Halo Flashpoint, and it'll be interesting to see how the waves come out. So, James, are you excited for the tournament this weekend? I think it's this weekend. This episode hopefully comes out just before the tournament's going to start. So.
Yeah, so as recording, we're about 24 hours out from the first round of that tournament. So very much looking forward to it. I'm calling our drive tomorrow morning down to Nottingham for the event, and I've got sort of my list is in. My bag is almost packed, and we're ready to roll in about 24 hours time.
Are you taking all your models just to change things up on the day, or are you kind of dead set on your fire team?
So we've had to submit lists for Saturday and Sunday in advance. So that's a bit of a shame because I was planning to change potentially on Sunday, depending on how I did on Saturday. And we'll talk a bit more of the event later. But no, so I'm locked in. I've got a fire team that I've played a few games with, and I'm sort of comfortable with. So yeah, I'm kind of locked in for the weekend. I'll probably take a few extra models just in case there's pick-up games on Saturday night or whatever. But yeah, mostly it's sort of locked in and ready to go.
Oh, okay, interesting. We might actually go through. Have you got your list in front of you? It might be worth going through it.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about that. There's a bit when we get to the event. I think I'll give a bit of a rundown on my view of kind of where the meta in inverted commas is going to be, and probably give some horribly inaccurate predictions. Yeah,
shouldn't give people the advantage though. Yeah.
Well, this is it. Well, we're recording as late as possible so that my super secret tech. There's nothing super secret about what I'm playing. The super, so that people give people the minimum amount of opportunity to adjust for my nonsense.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, we might as well go for the news. So we've had a little bit of news come out over the holiday period. We didn't get our 12 days of Christmas that we normally get from Mantic. However, we did get still some Halo Flashpoint news, and one of the big ones that everyone is, well, I don't know if everyone's talking about, but a lot of people are talking about, is the FAQ that came out, which, it came out with a few mixed feelings, so I'll let James to express his feelings on that one.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think there's a lot of, the FAQ is short, which is probably what you want from an FAQ. It covers a bit of ground, but it doesn't cover anything sort of materially game breaking to the way you will have been playing Flashpoint at home. So if you never look at this, you're probably still doing it right. The things that they address, there's some movement stuff that they address that was esoteric when it was raised originally, and is basically impossible to understand without a diagram, which I'm not going to be able to do justice to in the audio format, so I just recommend you go look at that diagram.
It's in the Discord if anyone needs it. So
yeah, it's in the Discord. It's on Mantic's website. You can Google it. Yeah. I wouldn't worry too much. The only thing that really clarified that I was sort of wanting to see was what happens when a Deadeye shoots an elite with rapid transition. So Deadeyes can shoot twice with rapid transition. When an elite is attacked, they can evade a square, or cube, and it was unclear if your order of operations from the rulebook was shoot, evade, or shoot, evade. They've clarified that to be shoot, evade. Which again, it's all that's probably the most relevant ruling in that FAQ, and even that is incredibly marginal. I think the main thing I took from it really is it's not an FAQ. So I expect in a modern war game, generally FAQ is here is how to understand the rules we've already written, and sort of like this is how you understand the rule we've already written. And then errata changes the rules, so that you have an extant rule set that's kind of updated with errata, and then FAQ explains that where there's any kind of confusion, but it's in the rules. Yeah. This is kind of additional rules that sort of sit that you now become part of the game text, because there are things in here that are very definitely not explaining rules that are already written down. There are things in here that are no, that is a new rule that you are or sort of new text to explain how this works isn't in the book. Looking at the energy shield barrier rulings, for example, those are just not in the rule book.
Yeah.
It's not a problem, but it will make the game over time more complicated if you're adding rules text that's not part of the rules text through FAQ, which is what it is. It's not the end of the world, but it was an interesting take. I don't know. Is that common for Mantic in their games? I don't know.
It has been in the past. They don't give a lot of meaty kind of FAQs, but they do clarify a lot of those things and fine tune them. And then the newer editions, the new rule books that come out, they do add in that kind of stuff. So it's fairly common, and what didn't surprise me of how, you could say, short the book was. But there was a lot of stuff in there that did surprise me, like the correct sequence to start the game. That was good to actually have that clarified a little bit, because it does get a little bit confusing, especially when you look at Scout. And where the recon kind of falls with that. And yeah, I think they probably could have worded it better, I would say, because especially how they've kind of established it there, but if they start adding more keywords that do something similar to Scout, it may make things a little bit more confusing.
I mean, that's their rules templating all over, though. I mean, if you weren't a fan of how they've written the rules in the main rulebook, this FAQ is not going to change your view on that. No. The game's phenomenal, but the explanation of the rules is not great. I mean, you can read... The example is, like, you look at evade, the example I've already given around evade and rapid transition, doesn't actually tell you the answer to the question. You can work it out based on what they've written in the answer to the FAQ, but it can tell you the answer. I had to read it 3 times. And you just go, like, you could have just written the answer, lads. There's actually white space at the bottom of this column of text. You could have just, like, had an extra line that actually answers the question and then explains why.
It's like they gave you a video how to make a cake instead of giving you the recipe of how to make the cake, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And they, this is their rule writing all over, is that, again, in most modern war games, you would have, like, a template for this is how a rule operates, and then the rules operate within that framing so that you can do things like timing, and it's clear how rules interact with each other. In this game, like, the rule is, each rule is its own island, and then that rule has to explain to you how it interacts with literally every other rule in the game, because there's not really any kind of standardized templating for kind of timing or rules or how they interact, and that's going to cause some problems over time, which is why most games don't do it that way anymore. Doesn't make the game any less playable, it just makes it harder to understand and harder to write cohesive and coherent rules for Mantic. But the FAQs, otherwise, that's me nitpicking the FAQs, nothing to write home about. It codifies some stuff we needed. It's nice to have it out there. But the game is still fundamentally functional and very playable, so all good.
Yeah, and I think with more tournaments and more feedback, that they only can go up from there, right? And feedback like what you just gave there, which, you worded a lot better than I did. I think they would hopefully integrate that. I'm sure you're not the only one. You're definitely not the only one, I should say, that feels that way. So I think it's just time. And we had to continue to point this out and also take it in a way of, like, we're doing this to crap on them. We're doing this because we want the game to be better. We want it to be the best beast that we can get. And I should also point out that you're not Sir James, because in the actual FAQ there's a photo and it says credit to Sir James, and I just want to clarify it's not you.
Not that I'm aware of.
No,
I am common as muck.
But yeah, we'll see how it goes, and I'm sure it'll be interesting to see whether they provide another one after the tournament coming up. I do know there's a few big tournaments that's going to happen the start of the first this year, so it'll be interesting to see when we get more tournaments being played, more results, more you could say issues, and things that need to be clarified. We'll see this FAQ hopefully expand. Hopefully they take the link and they just add to it instead of just providing link after link, and then everyone doesn't really know which one's the most up to date one. Hopefully they just keep one and just keep on constantly adding to it.
Yeah, that'd be a road to madness. I think but no, I think that's likely. I suspect we'll need something after War Games drops. Just that's our next opportunity. I don't think there's a lot of rules questions kicking about that this didn't address. To be fair, I think everything else is sort of is clear in the book. I'm not aware of any other rules questions that are sort of really circulating, other than where people try and read the Dead Zone rulebook and then get confused with themselves. And if you're one of those people, just stop reading the Dead Zone rulebook. That would be phenomenally helpful.
There was a few in the Mantic Discord of people wanting clarification on the FAQ, but nothing too significant. So, but actually,
there's always going to be
into the next bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off, James. I figured I was trying to segue it out. I figured we'd segue into the new classes. So one big thing that we got dropped were really nicely painted models of the new fire teams, which essentially it's two of them, but we've got fire teams Cerberus. Is it Cerberus?
Cerberus, I think.
Cerberus. And also the fire team, which is the war games kind of fire team. I've kind of divided them up, so we've got fire team Cerberus and then fire team war games. We'll have them separately because they are essentially the same armor. They're just the loadouts are different, and it's easier to kind of define them that way. It's the same kind of way that we had with the fire team Hydra. How a fire team Hydra and the fire team that came with the game, essentially they had the same armor, but the only difference was the weapon swaps. Just if we define it that way, so yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. I've defined it that way.
Yeah, no, I mean it does, and I think what's interesting. So I think that's the most interesting piece of like concrete news, other than more photos of the gorgeous models, not the me taking a photo through a cabinet at Mantic HQ with all the reflection. Actually seeing those on that video, the teaser video that's on Mantic's YouTube. It was interesting seeing these are new classes. So they're not more brawlers, more Deadeyes, more Mark 7s. These are 4 new classes, 4 new armor classes of Spartans, which in at least hints or suggests strongly new stat lines and new abilities that are different to the stat lines and abilities we've got on our existing Spartans, which will be interesting.
On theory, so we're assuming they do the same naming convention where they go Spartan and then the armor. So we had Spartan Deadeye because Deadeye is the name of the armor. If we use that same kind of idea, we've got Spartan JFO, then Spartan CQB, then Spartan Gungunner. I don't know how to say that. Gungnir.
I looked that up. I looked it up. It's Gungnir.
Gungnir. Oh, I think it must be Mornir, but then Gungnir. Okay, makes sense. And then Spartan Aesop.
Yeah, Gungnir is Odin's spear, which never misses.
There we go. Okay, sticking with that Norse theme, I guess. And we've got 6 new weapons. So we've got the H165 target tracker, and that's with Fire Team Cerberus for the Spartan JFO. Interesting because that's a weapon from Reach, and the effect is missiles coming from space. So I don't really know how that's going to be a very interesting aero effect kind of weapon, and to have that as a loadout seems really overpowered. So it'll be interesting to see. They kind of will have to depower it a little bit because you kind of use that weapon to blow up vehicles in the game. So I don't really know how they're going to incorporate that to a little bit of a smaller degree. In what do you think there, James? It seems a bit extreme. That's all.
It does seem a bit. I mean, my brain goes to the Hammer of Dawn in Gears of War, but yes, I mean, sort of this orbital strike guidance system seems a bit. I mean, there aren't. If you look at, assuming that they're not adding any rules to the rulebook, you could probably, it's going to shoot top down, so it's probably technically going to be a grenade. Daft as that sounds, because it will shoot top down. Yeah, or it might be explosive. Depends if they need line of sight or not, really, which is the only difference between the two. But yeah, presumably an explosive blast weapon.
Because it is a laser, right? So
it's like the laser. Yeah.
Yeah, because do you remember playing Halo Reach?
I do. I don't remember this weapon though, because it wasn't in the multiplayer.
I remember exactly where it is. It's actually I think it's Mission 2. It's that sword-based one where you kind of land on a sword base and you're trying to save the little base thing. When you head out, you pick up this target tracker just before you head out into the field, and then you target a tank, and then the missiles come down.
Okay, so I mean, so presumably a very powerful weapon. Maybe it's one use. Maybe it's one use and you have to respawn. You respawn to use it again. I'd be very, very interested to see what that looks like. These are sort of like your forward operators, aren't they? So I'd be interested to see. Maybe these are stealthy. I was having a quick scan through the keywords that we haven't seen yet. So maybe these guys are stealthy. With the sort of the target tracker, and they're kind of they're kind of bringing in those long range explosive shots maybe from space. Who knows?
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one. The next one is Spartan JFO. So this is just the war game one, and they have a concussion rifle. A lot of these weapons they are very reach kind of centric actually. So the concussion rifle, from my understanding, is a pretty weak weapon. If memory serves me right, it's not that powerful. So to go from using the same class, which is the JFO class, going from a target tracker to a concussion rifle, it's a bit of a change there. I'll be interested. The only thing that's really going to impact of how we play it is really those keywords, right?
I mean, it'd be interesting. I mean, bearing in mind, with points coming in, these don't need to be balanced against each other. So, it's entirely possible that target tracker is worth, Spartan is worth twice what a concussion rifle Spartan is when we get to actually play it. I mean, what I'm interested in, I think the big thing Spartans are lacking right now is the ability to frag. If this concussion rifle has knockback or frag, I'm all for it. It feels like it's an interesting gun. It's presumably maybe it's got knockback. It was that kind of thing where yeah, you kind of fired it. It was kind of mid to short range, sort of needler-ish range, and it would sort of lob these energy balls at people, and they'd kind of get knocked about a bit. Hence the concussion bit. So maybe it's got some sort of pinning or kind of frag effect. Spartans are sort of lacking effective displacement in their current roster, so it'll be interesting to see if it does something on that list.
Yeah, you make a very good point there. So yeah, concussion rifle is going to be an interesting one, especially I think the class of the JFO is really going to define of how that's going to be used. It could be a really it could be a tank to use the tracker, but yeah, I'm intrigued by that one. And we'll skip the weapons that we've already seen in the game, so we'll do that one last. The Spartan Gungnir. I'm gonna go with Gungnir because it just feels fun. So yeah, we'll do the Fireteam Cyberus one. So Gungnir Fireteam Cyberus one. He has a grenade launcher, which is a new weapon. And I'm assuming we're gonna see the grenade keyword in that.
You would assume, although weirdly, I mean, when I fired them in Reach, they were probably more behaved like an explosive than a grenade. But I'm going to assume they're grenade. Yeah, again, possibly another opportunity for us to get a frag weapon into the hands of a Spartan. So very excited for that. I'll be interested what these seem to have. I'll be interested a little bit to see what they. What the kind of the armor class does here. Are these more accurate? Are these hitting on threes, or are these tankier? It's quite difficult to tell from the description of the armor what the kind of what way the Spartan would lean. But it's certainly starting with grenade launcher sounds really really good to me.
Yeah, and the flip side of the Cyberus one is the Wargames one, which has the plasma launcher. So we're actually looking at pretty heavy weapons here for this character.
I loved that gun in Reach. It sort of rotated, didn't it? It fired like those sort of slightly tracking sticky white balls.
Yeah, it's like four of them, I think. Yeah, the longer you hold it for.
Yeah, you sort of held it down to charge it up, and then when you let it go, it would fire 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these projectiles. I mean, presumably a gun with the sticky keyword. Presumably,
makes sense.
Maybe, but which would imply it's probably an explosive weapon, but certainly heavier gear. But then we know points are coming, so that'll be a trade-off somewhere else, I suspect.
I think that's the trend of these two fire teams is that they've just got heavier weapons. They're just they're there to pack a punch. So I've got a feeling they're not designed to be a fire team on their own. They're designed to be a customable, which kind of buys into the whole customization aspect that Wargames is going to provide. And that's the thing that jumps out at me. I don't think this is intended to be their own individual fire team like the others. So it'll be interesting. But anyway, we'll go to Hazop. So we've got Spartan Hazop, the Fireteam Cyberus one, and they've got they call it a spike rifle. Most people know it as the spike, like a spiker, which is what killed Miranda Keys at the end of Halo 3.
Yeah. It was also, from my memory, not a brilliant gun. So maybe this is the cheap Spartan that that balances out the fact that So normally you would, when you sold a box, you'd have a box that sort of at points would be equivalent to something to the other boxes. But this one already having a grenade launcher, a target tracker, and a gravity hammer in it. Maybe this guy's just like super rubbish to balance it out. I don't know. Probably the thing I'm least excited for. Although I'll be interested to see what a Hazop. They're generally survivable, I think, would be my kind of take on that armour.
They take a punch. They're more scouty. They're kind of like they go into those areas that no one wants to go into, because hence the Hazop armour. But I think definitely Weight of Fire would probably be on this one. It just feels like it's a Weight of Fire kind of model.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see where it comes out. Yeah, you never know. Maybe they got armor 3. Who knows? Or 3 shields. Yeah. It could be. Maybe they're statted slightly differently. Yeah,
it's because the meta's so fresh and so new. Just this introduction of these two fire teams can really change like how you play the whole game. That's why this is a little bit exciting. And we'll go. The Spartan Hazop for the war game side of it, and they've got an M45 shotgun. So this is actually the second shotgun we've had in the game, because we had the Bulldog to begin with. So it'd be interesting to see how this shotgun acts comparatively to the Bulldog and what the differences is there.
Yeah, and I don't remember these clearly enough to remember if there's like a really mechanical difference with these weapons. Whether they're just two different flavours of shotgun. Who knows?
I feel like range is going to be the big one. I think that's gone to seems like the only real change for it. I think this one will probably have a shorter range than the Bulldog. I think the Bulldog's 3, right?
Bulldog's 2, I think.
Right. Are they 2?
I think Bulldog's 2, so... Maybe this...
Maybe I got the other way around.
Or maybe this is one that actually has a close combat stat as well as a maybe this is like a close-up shotgun, and you go actually you can fire this in melee as well as in the way the energy sword has 2 profiles. It's possible.
Yeah, interesting. But again, more questions that are just as we introduce more weapons to the game. And actually, I did a little bit of math, and that makes 29 different weapons already in the game. And we haven't seen any pistols yet. We haven't seen the legendary Halo pistols yet. So we're still quite a lot to go.
Maybe some of these come with pistols. That's the other option. Maybe it's entirely possible that maybe some of these have, or maybe some of these start with frag grenades. Who knows? I mean, we don't not knowing the class or indeed most of the weapon stats here. It's all speculation. But there's sort of what will be interesting to see is maybe they've got a worse knife and a better pistol. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, we've only got the current fire teams to go off, and you would like to think that some of that would carry over, like the energy shields at 2. I'm assuming that's going to be the same heading into these ones, but yeah, you do, the close combat. Do these loadouts have the close combat loadout still with it? I would assume that by standard, and this is a huge assumption, that part of the faction of Spartans is by default they've got 2 shields and close combat being the knives, but it's still a little bit early to make that call.
Yeah, well, I suppose there's a couple of models we haven't talked about that we probably won't have knives because they're better armed, looking at them.
True. So that's the Spartan CQB. So we'll do Fireteam Cyberus first, which is the gravity hammer. And then on the wargame side of it, we've got energy sword, which are items we already know what they come with. I don't see, unless they're going to change, I don't know, I don't think they would change how they operate, loadout versus pickup. I would assume they would stay the same.
No, I would assume so. And CQB, for close quarter battle, these are short-range fighty Spartans. What's going to be interesting is what are their stat lines and what other abilities do they have? Do they have something like, there are various close combat-related keywords we haven't seen used yet. I think there's sort of one which gives you extra dice when it gives you extra dice in melee. There's ones, so it'll be interesting to see whether these have got, different keywords, different stat lines for the brawlers that we've got today. I'll be really interested in that.
So yeah, those are the 8 new ones. So it's going to be really interesting to see. We obviously won't know anything until March, or maybe some releases a bit closer. We'll get some inside scoop. But yeah, those are the 8 that we actually got. As I was going through this, writing this up, we actually know a lot more than I actually thought we did. So there's only a few surprises there left, and that's really going to really change how they play altogether. Just what are those keywords? And we could assume till we're blue in the face, but we're not really going to know for a few months.
No.
Cool. All right, so we'll go on to war games. So you've put down not full customization. So what do you mean by that, there, James?
So we're probably into kind of hints and stuff that's appeared on social media for the next couple of bits of news. So we'll probably take the next couple of things together. So there's been sort of hints, if not explicitly stated by a Mantic employee on Discord, that Wargames does not contain full customization of Spartans, so no sort of starting from scratch and writing them, building them from the ground up. I think that was always a little bit of a pipe dream, but as we look towards, well, what is Wargames, that's just a little bit of confirmation. It's not like build your own Spartan from the ground up, at least at this stage. That doesn't mean there's no customization, but it probably not a full customization. On the flip side of that piece of news, though, over Christmas someone was building their own, cutting up their existing Spartans to build new poses on Facebook, and said, you really need to make multi-part plastics because this is difficult, and having cut one up myself to make a different Mark 7 sculpt, I can vouch for that. And Ronnie chipped in that Facebook chat to say, watch this space in January, effectively. So there's a hint, potentially, that we're going to get some multi-part plastics. So two different opposite ends of news there. Not full customization in war games, but potentially more customizable plastics coming in the future. So just hints.
I always assumed that that you could customize your fire team was going to be the extent of it. Otherwise, they would have they would have just said that outright, just to not get people's hopes up. Because at the moment, when we're looking at these fire teams, the only thing that is changing is the weapon, right? The armor is still the same. So I think maybe we'll see some of that, the ability of just like, I want to buy a CQB Spartan, and you are provided with the energy sword and gravity hammer, so you can swap out whatever one you want. It could be something as simple as that, or we could be seeing a way of building your own Spartans, but be able to give whatever weapons to it. There's so many ways that can go, and I think the Mantic's going to toe the line between, they don't want to make it too complicated because they do want it to be, I wouldn't say an entry level game, but a game that anyone can still pick up, but still be able to be competitive and play the game, because the minute you start diving into that side of it, it kind of feels like if you're not if you don't have the ability to buy these kits, you just can't be competitive. And I think that's where they kind of have to balance it right now, and I think they're a bit worried about going. I always take Ronnie's stuff with a little bit of a grain of salt, because there is some things he tends to say a little bit too ahead of time, and they don't come to fruition, such as in Kings of War. The infamous thing last year, we were supposed to get a third faction, and he said that, and we never did. And Ronnie, loved, you see all these interviews, he's got so much passion, love the guy, and I wish I had half the amount of passion for something that he does. But also, I think he gets a little bit too ahead of himself as well. So, and I mean that with all the love in the world.
Yeah, and this is why we're putting this down as hints, right?
Exactly.
I don't think we want to spend too long on this section. It was just some interesting stuff that had dropped that might be worth sharing with the listeners. But I think we should move on. You've been a busy boy, Dave. I think. Yeah. So
I've built the wiki. So there's been a lot of throwing around about reference material. Because the keywords has been a big one for people. That there's the referring to the keywords while you're playing the game can be a bit painful, and me and my partner, I finally convinced my partner to play a game with me. She's not really into board games. This is the first kind of war game she has ever played, and that was a big one of that, needing to reference those keywords. Yes, they have the starter mat, but it's still a little bit confusing, and she kind of likes it on her phone, being able to quickly search for it. So I actually started the manticgameswiki.com, which the idea behind that is to catalog all their games. Eventually, we will already have the Kings of War wiki.com, and also we've got the Mantic Universe wiki.com, which I've started up as well, but this one's specifically for those games that aren't Kings of War or any of the Warpath games like Dead Zone. So if you do want to, you can go to manticgameswiki.com, and in the search bar, just look up any keyword with a capital letter at the beginning, any keyword, or you can type in what I forgot here, KRG in capital letters, and that will go directly to keyword reference guide, and that will have all the keywords on one page and a quick way of just clicking it and jumping to that. You can also go to any loadout. So, whether it's the Elite or whether it's any of the Spartans, you can go to their profile page and it will have all the keywords associated with that, with all the weapons, and all the weapons also have their keywords attached to it. So it's just a quick way, quick guide, and also I'm hoping in the future, as rules change, as things get updated, as new keywords come in and old keywords get their wordings changed or rules changed, we can catalog that as well. So that way, if someone's looking at an old rule book, you can settle disputes by just quickly going on the wiki, nice and simple, and just checking it. So yeah, that's been my life for a little bit. I was stuck in hospital, so I was bored. So that's why I did it. Hopefully it's a bit useful in the tournament, hopefully for you tomorrow there, James.
Yeah, much appreciated, and thanks for doing that. And it's it's great to see you living up to your name and building more wikis, and I think that'll be a useful resource for the community. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. I'd encourage people to check it out. That's going to be a fantastic resource as that builds and grows. So thank you.
Yeah, it's on every. I think all 3 wikis are on every YouTube page, YouTube video that we release as well. And yeah, if you do want to donate to it as well, there's a way to donate because it does cost me money, and I'm buying too many wikis. I have to stop now. So otherwise, I'm going to be poor. So,
we've got to feed Dave's wiki addiction.
Don't feed it. I mean, you can donate to it because the whole idea is that once the expenses are paid, I want to reinvest those funds into the community. Whether it's starting up a painting competition for tournaments, whether it is sponsoring sponsoring events as well, chucking some money into it. I want to actually put the money back into the community, and that's my ultimate goal. So once the expenses are paid, that will be the next step. Because I think that's a way of kind of getting more people invested if they see people actually care. So that's what I'm going to do.
Absolutely
cool. And then I think the next one is obviously. Oh, sorry, go James. You do it.
No, go. Sorry, I was going to throw the ball straight back to you. So, should we just take that again? So the one final thing on the teaser video that we haven't talked about that came out is right at the end. We see the silhouette of a brute and the banished symbol, and we know brutes and banished are next, which we're all excited for. And then from there, in the sort of the New Year video Mantic put out, there is a moment's game footage from Halo, which features a character I know nothing about. So I'm going to ask Dave to take us into the lore section and talk to us about this character who I have nothing about. I have no knowledge of. So, Dave, take it away.
We should mention 2 things here before we jump into it. Now, Forging Flashpoint did mention us on their YouTube channel. So, a big shout out to... I can't remember the guy's actual first name. I can't remember what it is, but Forging Flashpoint, a great YouTube channel. He mentioned us in his video, but he also mentioned a moment where Ronnie mentioned what the next legend character would be, and that would be Atriox. And the funny thing is now, as I said, Ronnie does say things in the heat of the moment, but the way to support the evidence of Atriox coming on, which is a brute chieftain, is in the video that James just mentioned. Right at the end, you see a moment, and that's actually Atriox fighting Master Chief, which was in Halo Infinite. Now, they could have put any, image from Halo in there of any brute, but they specifically put a character versus a character that's already in the game, which has been rumored, which is Atriox. So I'm fairly confident the next hero character with probably Wave 3, if they followed the trend of what they did with Wave 1 and Wave 2, is Wave 3 we're going to see Atriox, and that's going to be the big bad. So, I mean, James, how much do you know about Atriox? Do you know anything about him? And, what's your gut on it?
I mean, I know brutes look like big monkeys. That is the full extent of my knowledge. So I'm going to be next to useless in this section. So
no, that's right. So I'll basically just let you know a few things. So you know about Halo Wars, right?
Only vaguely.
So Atriox was the big bad for Halo Wars 2. So he wasn't in the main games. He's only briefly been in Halo Infinite at the end, but Atriox was the big bad of Halo Wars 2. And to be honest, the cinematics for the Halo Wars franchise, if you've got time, James, watch them, because they are way better than the Halo ones in my opinion, and they're just great. And in Halo Wars 2, they actually explain the origins of Atriox. There are comics that elaborate a lot more, and obviously there is like expanded lore, but there is a really good cinematic that basically covers what I'm about to say at the beginning here. So Atriox was part of the Covenant, and so he rebelled against the Covenant during the Covenant-Human War. So he formed the Banished. So the Banished actually was formed before the Covenant got destroyed. So take into account that Halo 1, Halo 2, and Halo 3 all take place in 1 year. And that's in 2552. Atriox rebelled against the Covenant 3 years before in 2549, during the heat of the Covenant-Human War. So basically what happened is the Atriox was constantly being sent with members of his clan, about 40 of them, to be basically cannon fodder, to throw to the front lines. That they didn't expect them to live, and they kind of did the whole classic throw the numbers over at them and try and overwhelm the enemy. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your opinion of him, he's the only one that kept on coming back. So Atriox came back after being sent with 40 of his men. And then, everyone's like, oh, I can't believe he survived. He got thrown again. He came back, thrown again. And basically a legend started to form about Atriox. He was basically unkillable, and started to become this legend. Now, obviously, prophets don't like that. Prophets are very much about control. They don't want people to be seen as more powerful than themselves. So that started to annoy specifically the High Prophet of Truth. So the Prophet of Truth, as we know from Halo 3, it basically didn't think Atriox would survive for so long, being sent as cannon fodder, just sent to the front lines over and over and over again, and he basically became a threat. And they kind of conspired to frame him for murdering some elites. And so he was going to get executed, and then bang, he rebelled. And essentially he rebelled, that inspired other brutes, and that's how the Banished was formed. So essentially he was banished from the Covenant. And keep in mind, this is 3 years before the end of the Covenant War. So the Covenant were now fighting the Banished and the humans at the same time. Now the Banished weren't that big to begin with. They basically just went off and started doing raids and started just kind of getting resources, but the main Covenant human war was going on, but the Banished was still there. Covenant couldn't beat Atriox. He was just, people were joining on his side. He was becoming this revered figure. Wasn't too powerful yet, but then after the war finished and the Covenant fell, that's when basically everyone started going on his side, and he started just becoming basically a tyrant. And just collecting essentially all the Covenant who are now splintered. There's all different kind of factions that have split off from the Covenant, but the Banished were the big one, which mainly dominated by brutes, but there were Sangheili, Ugoi, all the different races that kind of joined jackals as well. I can't remember what Kilkaya, whatever they're called. Kaya, whatever they're called. Either way, they all joined the Banished, and they got that red look. And I think effectively that's the origins of the Banished and Atriox. Now, what we know is when he was introduced in Halo Wars 2, basically he had made it to the Ark, which was where Halo 3 was based on, and he was trying to get his own Halo ring. So basically he was trying to take over the Ark. Humans with the portal from Earth to the Ark was still there. It was still established. So humans were already there, but then the Banished showed up. They had a war with the Spirit of Fire. That storyline, let's not get into it, because that's a long, complicated storyline of how the Spirit of Fire landed there as well. But ultimately, it ended up being more of a stalemate, that whole conflict, and it was not really clear how it resolved. But either way, humans and Banished kind of fought each other, and then somehow, I'm not quite 100% sure. I'm sure there's some kind of lore explanation. He makes it to Installation 07, which is where Halo Infinite takes place on. He fights the UFC Infinity, defeats Master Chief, and that's where we see at the end of that Mantic. What's next trailer, we see Atriox and Master Chief fight. That's actually part of the cinematic that takes place there. Master Chief gets his ass kicked by Atriox. Atriox kind of goes down and faces Cortana, because Cortana expected that to be Master Chief. You know, Cortana was told that Atriox seemingly killed Master Chief. We know they didn't, but seemingly did. And that's when Cortana does one of her last actions and destroys the ring that they're on, Installation 07, and kind of destroys the ring so the Banished can't use it, and presumably Atriox is dead. Now, for the whole game of Infinite, we're told about the memory of Atriox, and Atriox is no longer around, yada yada yada, but for just a bit of a spoiler, he turns up in a cutscene at the end of Halo Infinite, showing him finding the legendary race called the Ixalan. It's a Xalannyn, which is also known as the Endless, which is a race that seems to be imprisoned like the Didact was in Halo 4, if you recall there. And so that's where it kind of lands. So Atriox is a big bad in the world. Everyone believes he's dead, but he's actually not. As I found out by doing my research, no bad guy ever dies, because Guilty Spark is still alive, the Didact is still alive. Everyone is still alive. So I don't even know if they even kill bad guys anymore. But yeah, that's essentially what Atriox is. Does all that make sense, James?
It does, and that's good background. So that's the character we're getting, presumably to lead the Banished as their kind of, presumably their legendary choice as that wave comes out, would be the guess. Any sense of like his fighting style? What can we expect from an Atriox style kind of character?
It doesn't look like he uses ranged weapons. I would say he is most cutscenes, every cutscene in Halo Wars 2, and also the Halo Infinite cutscenes. It's the classic chieftain kind of gravity hammer kind of style. So I'm assuming that's going to continue, just kind of similar to, and this is probably why they made Master Chief have an energy sword, is because they knew Atriox is going to be implemented with a sword as well. So that makes the legendary characters both with melee weapons. That's my guess, but we don't know until we know, really.
No, we don't know what we don't know, but no, that's it. That's good to know. That's good background for anyone who's wondering what that few seconds meant at the end of the Mantic year ahead video. So fantastic.
Yeah, and it seems deliberately chosen that it was the two characters, which are the only now two legendary characters that will be on the table. So it kind of makes sense. It'll be interesting to see what happens actually after this, because that's when we're kind of covered Infinite, really. So we've kind of gone on the Spartans Infinite, we've got Master Chief, now we've got Atriox. Where do we go from here will be a very good question, because we kind of, now we'll be getting past the Infinite stuff, because it really was Master Chief versus, or Spartans essentially, versus Brutes. And that was basically Halo Infinite. So it'll be interesting to see, are we going to see Arbiter? I would feel like the next logical move would probably be Arbiter and Elite. So the sort of saying Helos, that's that splinter faction that's come away from the Covenant. That's really Arbiters. They're on the side of good, you could say. But it'll be interesting to see what happens from here.
Yeah, absolutely. But we've got, that's at least 6 months ahead of us. So hopefully we'll get a bit more detail and a bit more hints after we've seen what Wave 2 finally has in store for us, and then Wave 3.
Yeah, I think it will come down to sales at the end of the day. And this is why this year is going to be so important with Halo Flashpoint. This is going to be the telling year of what legs does it have, right? Because if they don't nail the next year in terms of their releases, in terms of how the tournament game is going, how they're supporting that, it's going to die, and it's going to fade away very quickly, just as much as it came. But if they're able to nurture that, if they're able to get the community going, and they've got the staying power of Halo, because Halo is sticking around. We're going to get a new Halo game every once in a while, and that's going to come back up again. And it's so easy to tie in those releases with what's on the table. It'll be interesting to see how this next year is going to go. It all comes down to how Mantic treat it, though. That's going to be. I mean, there's only so much us fans and all that can do to support a game. We are not endless money pits. You can't just expect us to buy every single thing all the time. We also have to make us want to buy those things as well. So
it's got to find an audience, but that's on the community to do things to drive to drive people to play, and Mantic to produce the product and nurture the game. So be very interested to see where we go, but certainly a promising start for the game. And probably on the topic of nurturing the community, do we want to move on and talk about the weekend ahead?
Yeah, talk about your event that's happening tomorrow, the UKTC. That's what we're calling it. What is that the acronym we use?
Yeah, so that's a couple of people have asked this. So this is the UKTC are essentially a company that run big wargaming events in the United Kingdom. So they, they'll hold, probably every other month. There is a big tournament somewhere in the country that they're holding. They're kind of anchored around 40k, but bring in lots of other game systems as well. Usually about a dozen game systems. Often 1,000 gamers at these things, mostly playing 40k, but also playing other systems. So the event that starts tomorrow, Mantic have secured at the Nottingham GT space for 100 players a day to play Halo, and they have arranged with UKTC that those tickets are essentially free. So normally sort of a weekend's game at UKTC would run you maybe £50, £50. The tickets for this, they're running 2 one-day events, and those are £1 each, which is technically refundable. So they're running they're putting a big investment into doing this weekend, in taking that space from UKTC, and that's the event that's happening. So starting tomorrow, 2 one-day events. For those of you who don't want to travel to Nottingham around me still 3 inches of snow and sub-zero temperatures, there are aspects of this I think that are going to be useful to all of you, potentially in sunnier climes that will give you sort of there are some nice things about this event in the rules pack that hopefully are going to be useful to everybody.
I'm sitting here in my singlet, so I can't sympathise at all. But I love a bit of snow right now. I mean, I've never had a white Christmas or anything like that, and it's something I've always wanted. So I do envy it, but I'm sure it gets you get over it pretty quickly.
I am getting tired of chiseling the car out of the ice, but yes, it's we don't get it often, but when we get it, we seem to get it worse at the moment. So there you go. So. The event in front of us, Mantic, I'd encourage people to seek out the rules pack. They are on the Discord, they're around, we can put links to them in the show notes.
Yeah, we will, yeah.
Since we talked last as a group, they've further updated the what they call the map pack, which is a scenario pack. On the previous cast, we talked about how they'd updated Capture the Flag. I've now played a bit of that version of Capture the Flag. In this version, the flag is a weapon, which you can drop. That enables much faster scoring, makes for a much more fluid and dynamic game of Flag. I've played quite a few of those now. That's a significant improvement on Capture the Flag. The update they've dropped since then brings reworks Oddball, which is good because the Oddball in the book is fundamentally broken. So the version of Oddball presented in the current rule book it's essentially who goes first wins. It's not quite that bad, but it's pretty close. Oddball Reloaded, which is the version they've updated into this rules pack, I've played a few times now and is really fun. So that basically has, at the end of each round, the oddball respawns from wherever it is into its start position, so that it creates a much more dynamic game. A much fightier game, and actually having played a few games of that now, it is significantly better experience playing that version of Oddball. So both of those are live for the weekend, and if you're playing at home, I'd recommend giving both of those a try. I think they're superior to the versions in the book by quite a bit, so that's well worth a look for those of you that are at home.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying, so the rule says from the beginning of round 2 onwards, the oddball will respawn on its current starting location. The token is removed from the model carrying it and placed per map. So it's not, I would say it's every round from round 2. I think that's rather important to mention as well, because I don't think you could actually get to the oddball in the first round. I don't know, you might be able to.
Oh, you can.
It'll be very difficult. Yeah.
No, you can you can sprint to it you can sprint to the oddball round 1 and have it, and then what tends to happen in the base book version of oddball is whoever goes first sprints the oddball. If they've got a free cube of movement from a command dice, they use that to move backwards. Then they get killed by somebody. On the enemy goes, kills or pins them to drop the oddball. Then one of their friends runs up and grabs the oddball, and that tends to be the flow of the game. As sort of the side that went first sort of steadily walks the oddball back into a safer and safer position, further and further from the enemy's spawn points. That can't happen in this version. So the oddball starts in position, somebody grabs it, but if you grab it and run off with it, that character that's run off with it, when it respawns the centre, is now often out of position. So there's it's a really interesting and tactile version of the scenario. The main thing seems to be making sure you've got people contesting that cube where it respawns to stop your opponent running away with it. It's really interesting and a nice update.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how people play it. I mean, it's going to be interesting from a tournament setting of how these maps kind of evolve and change, because I think that's going to be... We've already seen an alteration, and it's not too... We've been 6 months into it, so it's going to be interesting to see the other map types, how they change and evolve, and the only way we're going to find out is with these official tournaments. So
yeah, and there was comments that in the rules pack it caps the VP scoring for a round, or in a game round, to 20. None of these scenarios can get to 20, and apparently when I asked the question about that, it was expressed that apparently there are more scenarios coming that can score above 20. We know they've got more in the pipeline, and so there is that'll be interesting to see. And I do think that's a good way to... We talked about this before, but one of the great ways to kind of get more play out of what you've already got is new scenarios, and those are relatively fast to produce for Mantic. We've seen already they can iterate on them quickly, so I think new and interesting scenarios are great, add great life to this game as we go forward. So yeah, very much looking forward to getting... We're playing some combination of Slayer, Oddball, Capture the Flag, and Strongholds in rotation on both of the days. So we'll get 2 games of each of those in over the weekend. So very much looking forward to that.
I think it's interesting that there's no stockpile.
Yeah, and I've never put stockpile on the table because I've always, since the game was released, I've always kind of had one eye on the next event, which has never included stockpile. So probably one of the first things I'll do after the weekend is get a game of stockpile in, because I've never played it.
It's a relatively new kind of map type when you look at Halo, and I think they came with Infinite, I think, if memory serves me right. So it's interesting to see why they're leaving that off. I personally haven't played it, so I don't know if there are some kind of, something fundamentally flawed with the map type, and maybe they just included it because it's in Infinite. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, there's so many map types they can include from the legacy of Halo. I mean, I've heard people even talk about making Griffball, which, if you have any knowledge about that, I think they'll be amazing. I think it'll be awesome to get some red versus blue models in there. I'm a big red versus blue fan. I've got the original DVDs from back in the day, and I went over to RVBTO back when I was a big kind of red versus blue fanboy back in the day. So it'll be interesting to see whether they start to dive into that. And I think the War Games expansion is going to be the first. I'm hoping some newer scenarios in there. It makes sense. I mean, I would be very surprised if they don't, because it's War Games. It would be a bit silly not to include some more games in there, more scenarios. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, there's lots of variation you could do. I mean, and also I'd encourage the community to try your own stuff as well. I do think, there are, not everything has to be official from Mantic. Actually creating your own game types based on some of the, either your own ideas or some of the historic game types. I think things like King of the Hill from the old days, there's plenty of opportunity to create and experiment, and do some of that. And for organised play, the 5 versions we've got right now are really interesting, and each of them, as I've played more of them, has kind of real rich tactical depth. So I'm sure as we get more, it'll start to evolve. One of the other things with this is it's not just the scenarios. There are standard setups. The setup is really interesting. So there are standard maps for each of the each of the scenarios on the given day.
Yeah.
So that creates a sort of standardized setup, and then players alternate. So you place the buildings, basically the solid cube buildings, so from the basic 2 sets of recon. So 4 of the kind of the crate, the kind of the shipping crate size 2 cubes, and then 2 of the towers. They're standardly placed on each board, as well as the kind of the blocking L-shaped section. Yeah. And then players alternate placing the rest of the scatter, and based on 2 full sets of scatter from a recon edition, onto the board. When we've played a bit of this, that's quite tactical. The placement of the terrain is quite tactical, where you want to create kind of more cover, less cover, grabbing the big bits, potentially putting some of them in more awkward places to block off line of sight on some of the taller towers. So there's some interesting tactics in that terrain placement setting, where you just set up alternate terrain right at the start.
And it's the biggest change probably to those maps is that extra terrain compared to what was in the book. There is definitely a lot more terrain than initially stated.
Yeah, it's not tons more if you're playing Spartan Edition, but it is still more. It doesn't feel too bad at all playing with that kind of extra terrain at all. I thought it might be a bit confining, but actually it's pretty good. In the version we played, the biggest problem with the maps is, and I'm fairly confident this is a typo that they're refusing to change, is that actually 2 of the map setups favour red. If you're playing...
Which one?
So if you play Oddball, if you deploy in the blue deployment zone in Oddball, only 1 of your cubes can make it to the ball on round 1, whereas if you're playing in the red deployment zone, 3 of the cubes can.
Because it's 8 by 8. So if it was 9 by 9, you could put it right in the centre, but it's not.
Yeah, and it's to do with where they've put the L-shaped section. It's not immediately apparent unless you actually sit down and do it. I'm fairly confident that's a typo, but they're not going to do anything about it for the weekend. So yeah, if you're listening ahead of the weekend and you do win the recon role, you want to be in the red deployment zone. The other one where there's a also, I mean, you do choose your deployment zone after you know where the items are, so there are other factors, right? You'll know where all the terrain is. It might be that actually, based on the setup, there are other reasons you would want to go. I think in strongholds as well, I think if you take red, one of your spawn points lets you move so that you get a line of sight onto the middle stronghold, which is worth 4 points, whereas if you take I forget the exact detail, I think it's to do with that or the access to the 2 point, there is a very slight advantage. It's much more slight than in Oddball, and none of these really make a huge difference, but it is just sort of like this sort of the way they've done the symmetry actually doesn't quite align ideally.
Well,
but it is what it is.
I mean, on the clutch game though, if it's the final and that's what decides the final, it does take some steam out of the event a little bit, knowing that it was just a decision made at the beginning of the game which decided the end result. So I mean, I can fully. I think it's just the fact that we're looking at an 8 by 8 squared table instead of 9 because there's no center square essentially, and I think that's what's causing probably the issues that we have here.
Yeah, I think the challenge is really that I think that the challenge. Yes, you're right. I mean, it's all marginal. So the number of games it's actually going to matter in is small, but it's still there, and it's still not a great way to have a problem. The same is true of Recon, right? So the Recon is in effect for the event. Recon gives further advantages to the person that already gets to choose deployment zone and first, second, and it's like being first or second, particularly in strongholds. Like being second in strongholds is huge. And to have sort of you're going to get to choose to go second, awesome. And also, you're going to get to potentially get additional bonuses on top for winning the role that lets you choose to go second. It's sort of it's one of these things where you're going like, it's a little edge you could just polish off that over time. I think the reason, the kind of the heads up is the reason the red zone is slightly better in strongholds, in my view, is you create a situation where the the sort of the deployment zone that the respawn point that gives you clean line of sight, or cleanest line of sight to shoot the 4 point from respawning in the middle, puts you in the red zone closer to the 3 victory point stronghold than the 2 victory points. If you're on blue, in order to respawn and have a clear shot on the middle most valuable stronghold on the turn you respawn, you have to walk towards a 2 victory point stronghold rather than the 3 victory point stronghold, which is just it's just small, but it is just a thing that's like, actually, that could have been buffed out somewhere, I'm sure, but probably will be in the future.
I mean, I'm surprised that they didn't make the top one a 3 victory point as well. But I mean, my other point with it would be, actually, you could have made it so that, I mean, having 3 different is fine. Weirdly, this scores 8 points more than everything else in the scoring system. So you could have had, if you'd have brought it down by, you could have had it as 3, 2, and 1 victory point strongholds in the same configuration. Then the game would play to 12 points, which is much more analogous with the other games we're playing, which matters when we'll talk about scoring later on. Just an interesting and odd decision. There's a few little bits like that, but overall, the changes they've made are very positive, and the standard terrain lights actually do make it a bit cleaner. It's just a couple of the maps do have a slight favouritism to one side, which compounds with the recon roll. But there you go. I mean, you're not really going to know until the event's played out to see if that works or not. I'm sure there's some logic behind the madness, but we're not making the call, so.
Yeah, they're making the shout, and that's not going to be. We're talking a bit, but I don't think that's what's going to decide the event anyway. It's just it's marginal stuff. Well, let's hope not, but it's marginal stuff. And that kind of probably leads me a little bit into talking about the scoring for the event, which is interesting. So I don't know if this is common to Mantic, but the way the event's decided on total tournament points. So if you're running events locally, this is presumably what's in the organised play kit, which I've not got my hands on yet. And the sort of scoring is really interesting. So the overall placing is based on tournament points. And I come from gaming traditions where tournament points are essentially win, loss, draw, right? That isn't how they're doing it here. So you do get points for winning, losing, and drawing, but you get tournament points equal to your game score, which, as I say, varies quite a bit. So it's 18 for strongholds and 9 for flag, 3 for each flag, potentially. And then 5 for winning a game, I think 3 for drawing, 1 for a loss. So sort of you've got those kind of additive scoring, and then you get a number of achievements as well. So you're going to achieve sort of flavourful achievements like double kill, triple kill, juggernaut. There are sort of about a dozen of these achievements that you can achieve each round, or I think between 10 and 11 each round, depending on the game type you're playing. That you then have to sort of score as well, and they go onto your victory point total. So what it means across the weekend is, or across the event itself, you've got sort of kind of about 45% of your game score is based on the victory points you score in a game. There's sort of about another kind of 18% based on there's sort of another 18% based on kind of win, loss, draw. And then there's another kind of potentially sort of another 38%, about 4/10 of your score based on picking up these achievements. So what that's going to mean is getting through your games so that the winners got all of the victory points for their game, about 45% of their score, and totting up your achievements as you go through the event. 38% of your score are going to be really important to your overall placing in the event at the end of the day, which is really new to me. And it's going to lead to some interesting scoring results, I think. I don't know if is that something they do commonly, Mantic.
To be honest, I don't play too much competitively, but I believe achievements is a fairly new concept. But I don't like it because if you're playing against someone who may be just not good, you could just rack up those achievements and just milk the game as much as you wanted just to keep racking it up, and doesn't really make it an even playing field, because it means it's more of a case of, it depends. It's no longer depends on it whether you win, lose, or draw. It's now going to be depending on the skill of your opponent in terms of if you beat them, how badly do you beat them, and you could be in such a scenario. Go, all right, I'm going to win here, but I'm going to draw out the game a little bit because I need to rack up these achievement points a little bit. So I don't like it because that it could add to that. And from a game, if this is your first tournament and then you're playing against somebody who's doing that, it's going to maybe put you off playing in the future because you just got humiliated, basically.
It doesn't reward. I mean, I believe in sort of aligning incentive systems in things is generally, it's something very careful when you're building a system. You should be aligning your incentivizing people to do the right thing through your systems. And I'm not a fan of systems that reward the wrong, that have these sort of potentially poor behaviours to reward. Then I think there's a practical thing with the achievements, is giving people a page with a dozen achievements on it and going, by the way, as well as figuring out how to pick, we're kind of 2-3 weeks out from Christmas. There'll be people who've got this under their Christmas tree, played a few games, gone along to this, but maybe only played 2 or 3 games. Asking them to kind of play the game under time conditions when they're relatively new to it and keep track of these achievements, it's a lot of extra load on people but if you don't track it, you can't score well. So it's going to be really, I think that's a really interesting thing. I'm a bit nervous. Also, with new players, these are currently timed at 75 minutes for a game, which is not unachievable. But 75 minutes with new players, my worry is in something like Strongholds, if you don't get through that game, you might win Strongholds 12-6, but someone else has probably got, someone else could be getting the full 18 points in that time. So getting through games is quite critical to your overall placement as well, and often that can be, you might get the advantage of noob stomping somebody in the nicest possible way, but then you're probably going to get the disadvantage potentially if you have to play someone who's slow, like that. You can win the game, but win the game without enough points. It's going to be really interesting, that, and
I'll be surprised if the achievement aspect lasts, to be honest, because if it does feel like a thing they're trying out, I don't think it's a good idea. But I guess we won't know until people play it. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to be the one on the ground letting us know whether that actually works or not. And I think you'll be one of the voices there that should be speaking up about whether it's a thing to go forward or not. So I think this is one of those things we just have to let it play out and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm not kind of, these are my concerns going in, and the reason we're kind of recording ahead of time is we can compare and contrast then to what I experience on the days
exactly
that we're playing. I say that's just a worry it's a worry looking at it about is that going to work? But we'll see how we go. I think maybe achievements could be capped at a lower level. I think that might be the other thing, is just going like, actually, we can maybe cap these a bit lower, and sort of then it's a bit less of a thing. I think, like, because there are a couple where it's like, have all of your models eliminated during a game, kill someone that's just killed you in a previous activation that require kind of like a little bit of tracking. It's like, kind of, it's not like, oh, I've just done the thing is done, mark the achievement. It's like, hang on a minute, has everybody died this game? And I think that becomes a little bit just becomes a little bit like
who's monitoring that for people abusing their system as well?
Well, it's between the players, so you would hope that players are going to be honest with each other, and also that, like, the problem is, I think, a little bit is, it's very easy to go, oh, I did that, didn't I? And you did that one, and then we're, because it doesn't affect the outcome of the game at that point, and everybody just checks a few off, being a bit optimistic. And there's not a great incentive to stop your opponent from doing that. So, why don't we say you got that one and I got this one? Yeah, You'd like to think people won't do that, but actually, if you get 2 or 3 of those in, that could be 6 points. That's the difference between winning a game and not winning a game in terms of some of the scoring. Like, it's a little bit.
I think maybe it does. I think the influence on the score is too high for achievements. I reckon if you brought that down a little bit, I don't think there'll be too much of an issue, but because it's such a, as you said, when you're splitting it up, it's like a third of your ultimate score. People will do anything to gain an advantage in a competitive, environment.
Yeah, and I mean, it's up to a third of your score, or up to 38% of your score, to be technical. Across the weekend, it varies game type to game type, but like in the few practice games we've played with the achievements, they're a little bit difficult to keep track of, and like you don't normally get more than a handful. So although there might be 10 on offer, like 4 or 5 is sort of probably where it caps out, unless something really weird has happened. And like the worry I have, the little bit of worry I have with it is like when after the event somebody's got 10 every round or 7 or 8 every round. It's very difficult to unpick. Well, did they really? And it's a little bit, I don't know, it's a little bit, that bit for me is, there's no tension in that system. In any of the other systems, the opponent and both players are incentivized to deny the other. So there's a sort of an element of that the game is kept honest through the misaligned incentives. Everybody has an incentive to keep each other honest. When you get to these achievements, that's not the case, I don't think. And so it opens the door to more collusive and unhelpful behaviour. But we'll see. This is probably me being a little bit pessimistic, but also remembering every single game that's ever been videoed has a cheating scandal associated with it. So I'm realistic about human nature.
But as I said, it's going. I think this is starting to set the precedent of how tournaments are going to go. So whether this is going to be a staying feature of, I mean, it is unique and it does stand out a little bit. So that's a positive in terms of the competitive side of it. Whether this works and actually makes it fun. I mean, at the end of the day, if the game's not fun, people aren't going to play it, regardless of how competitive the game is. So this is, I do love them incorporating a very important part of Halo culture, which is achievements, into the game. I think it has too much, based off just not playing it. This is just, looking at the concept of it. I think it does put too much weight on those achievements, which I can see may change the way people play the game, and as you say, it could draw things out, could make things rather messy and more complicated than it probably needs to be. But again, it'll be interesting to see what happens next week when we're talking about it.
Absolutely. I mean, if I was going to do achievements, I would do them as being secondary objectives inside your game type, right? So in Capture the Flag, you get 3 points for capturing a flag. And then also, these are the 4 achievements that are live during the game of Capture the Flag that you could check off for additional victory points inside the game of Capture the Flag, which means there's less things to track, and those are additive to the score in the game, which means there is an incentive for both players to be honest, keeping each other honest about what's going on. That top of the head, that idea. But it's sort of, I like the idea of achievements. I don't think this is the implementation I would like to see in the long run. And I think as much it's headspace in a competitive environment where you've got to track these things on top of everything else in a new game. So we'll see. But I'm looking forward to it. So we'll see how we go. And I think with that, do we want to talk a little bit about the meta? Was that we wanted to go next? I'm sort of off script a bit here.
Yeah, I mean, you've written down factions: Spartans, Elite, and Chief. Is Chief and Spartans really two separate factions?
I think going into the event, you're playing one of 3 things. I mean, are they a different faction? Yes and no. I think that the view, if you're playing Chief, you are playing quite a different game, I think. And so, you're limited to 3 models. You're sort of, you've got Chief, who's quite dicey, and he's quite a kind of high variance character.
He's a tank.
He is and he isn't. Like, the problem here, the thing with Chief is, like, it's very much on how do I roll, right? Like, if you roll, you've only got 3 defense dice anyway, so you don't, your rolls don't necessarily have to be that bad. He's good, he's got tough, he's tough, but Chief is very dicey. Like, does he get a really good orders roll to one-man army? Is he in a good place for that one-man army? Does he pick up a power weapon early that enables him to make the most of that ability? There's a lot of he's really in the kind of the high variance end of of what he does as a Spartan, and so so I do think kind of you're making those are kind of your first three choices you're making. Are you playing elite Spartans, and are you playing, if you're playing Spartans, are you playing Chiefs? So those are that's kind of the broad choice everyone's making for the day, I think, at the event. I think sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
If I was a gambling man, I think, first of all, I think the player that wins the event, the players that do well at the event, were the ones that have practiced, got their heads around the game, know what they're trying to do in the missions, and keep an eye on the achievements. Right, those that, regardless of what they're playing, I think that's the prerequisite. If I was a betting man, I think elites have probably got the advantage from where we're set. I think they. Going second in strongholds, I'm not sure how they lose to anything other than a mirror. And they've got a really decent game with the the ability to displace in oddball as well through the plasma grenades. So I think like strongholds, they just respawn, step forward, throw a plasma grenade onto the objective, clear the objective. So provided they're going second, it's very difficult for elites to lose that scenario, I think. Chief is great in oddball. Probably
I was going to say,
very
actually,
weak in strongholds.
Just looking through the rules, it doesn't actually mention whether you can actually play elites or not.
They are viable. There's sort of that. I don't know if that's explicit somewhere, but it's covered in the achievement. They're mentioned in the achievements. I know people that are turning it with elites. It is understood somewhere, I'm sure.
Oh, okay, because it's not on the FAQ with all the map types, and it doesn't mention anything about elites. Because I don't know whether can you cross factions, because it doesn't mention anything about whether you can cross factions or use
that's in the core book. No, in the core rule book,
so the core rules,
yeah.
but not the okay. I don't know if on tournament rules whether they're changing anything there, because I do know sometimes they can just open it up. But all right.
No, you're limited to Spartans or elites only, and because your list is locked, then you're then choosing. You're choosing which 4 or 3 models you're bringing from what's available. So I think broadly. My take is, if you're in a position to get hold of 2 sword elites, you've probably got the advantage for the day. I think 2 sword elites, 2 carbine elites is probably the best thing. Broadly, just off evade and the plasma grenades, I think it's difficult. They have an incredibly strong strongholds game. They're reasonably competent into oddball. The only thing they're sort of, if you shoot them and miss in flag, they get bonus movement, which is incredibly useful. I think the bit they probably struggle in a little bit is Slayer, just because they don't have the range. So there's more. They're probably a bit more vulnerable in that one.
It'd be interesting to see if anyone playing elites. They'll be curious about. This will be really determine the meta, because I don't know. You make some very valid points. I just don't know from all the new variations of those maps, what's actually going to be the best there. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, we'll find out. I think sort of. I think anything can win it. I think the player experience and player preparation will be the biggest thing in determining how this goes for anybody, and that's not down to that's going to be down to how it's going to be down to the players rather than necessarily what they bring. I think elites have a slight edge. I think Chief is going to be, that being said, if Chief rolls well and gets a good matchup in strongholds, then I can see Chief walking through the field, on good dice rolls, if somebody gets just the right rolls at the right time with their Chief. And similarly, Spartans, I think, will make up, just by weight of numbers, pure 4-wide Spartans will be the majority of the players. So I could see, through weight of numbers alone, them getting there. So it'll be, anything could win. I think if I had to guess, I'd say 60% of the players will be probably 4-wide Spartans, and then a mixture of everything else. I think a mixture of the other 2.
Oh, it's going to be fair. I wonder if they're going to, hopefully, and you can ask them while you're there, whether they'll post the just the makeup of all the fire teams at the end of the event, just to see who came first, second, just to look at it. I'd be super curious of seeing the makeup of the top 5. Hopefully you're there, so you can just spin off your fire team. But just it'll be interesting to see, because that will be really telling of the meta. Because it's obviously, if there's one particular kind of fire team makeup that seems to be at the top consistently, that's going to be a good discussion point going forward to see how these new Spartans coming into the game will change that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, until we see war games, it's difficult. This is a very finite meta anyway, right? So
yeah, exactly.
It doesn't really, and ultimately, this is not a balanced environment, because I would be surprised if you put like the normal Spartan list against a normal elite list against a normal chief list, those are pointed anywhere similar currently today. So I'd be in. I think you'll probably find that. War Games fixes all that anyway. I think Cleric has said he will be doing a blog article on Mantic's blog with the stats after the event, and I'm sure we'll cover that blog article if we can't get hold of the data ourselves anyway. And certainly I'll report back on sort of what it looked like, runners and riders after the event.
Yeah, Clive is definitely... I think he's actually going to be physically at the event. That's from my understanding. So Clive,
yeah, he's TOing.
Clive Stone. He's the he's Cleric, as everyone refers to him on Discord. And me and him have got some beef at the moment, so we're not talking. but I mean that in the nicest way. We just have a disagreement on how we approach things. But yeah, it's interesting to see how it goes, and I'm excited for you. Good luck. I really hope you. I think we'll hold back with your fire team until next week. I think let's just see how that goes, and we can see whether your makeup is similar to other people you played against, and let's not give anyone the heads up just in case they choose to alter a few things on the day. But even though it's locked in, they can't do that. I want to keep that secrecy there, and just in case you've got any opponents coming up.
I don't think it's a big mystery, but no, that's fine. We've gone long enough. I'm sure this will be challenging enough for editing. So I think with that, hopefully I'll see many of you tomorrow or the day after at the event in Nottingham. And for the many of you who can't make it to Nottingham, please try these rules out. I think they're really great, particularly New Oddball and Flag. I think they're really worth playing. And we'll be back to give you a rundown after the event.
Before you go, James. You mentioned right thing, prediction. So you got to have to give your own prediction of where you're going to land.
Oh, where I'm going to land? I thought my prediction was going to be what the meta was and what kind of thing was going to win, which I thought I'd done.
I'm gonna twisting this on you.
So you've dropped this on me. So look,
So for the record, people, he came first in the Mantic Open Day a few weeks ago. So he knows how to play. He may be a little bit coy about this, but he knows how to play.
And I have done that thing that some people consider cheating, i.e. practicing. That already, how very dare I? Across the weekend, I'd kind of like to go. So look, there's 2 days, so it's 2 different tournaments. I want to set to the nice acrylic stuff. I need to finish in the top 16 one of the days to get the nice acrylic weapon and item tokens. So I'd like to, so my aim is to do that. My aim is probably to go 6-2, I think, if I can, across the weekend. So if I can go, win 6, lose 2, I'll be happy. 5-3 might be more. 5-3 might be more realistic, but we'll see how we go.
Okay, well, you made the call now. We'll be able to look back on it anyway. Good luck, mate. I hope you do really well, and I'm sure if people out there that have listened this far will be wishing you good luck as well. So before we wrap up, we'll just give another shout out to Forging Flashpoint. It's a really good YouTube channel. He just recently did a really good video about community-made maps as well that people have done. He released that about 9 hours ago as recording this. He gave us a couple of shout outs, mainly Jane, so but he gave the pod a bit of a shout out. And if he's listening, reach out. We would love to have you on the show, because I would love to pick your brain about some of the inspirations and some of the reasons why you do what you do, really. Another shout out goes to we've got a comment on our YouTube from, what was his name? from Owen902. And he said, in my heart, the Halo story stops after 3, which I think is everyone's kind of feelings on that. 343 has done Halo no justice, and I pray for the future. Now that being said, I have a Spartan edition ready to get painted and played, and they'll love to hear more Halo lore, Covenant War stuff mainly. So I'm actually going to do a bit of research into Covenant War story. Yeah, Atriox, we kind of dabbled in that, but something that we may be able to see on the table. I think 343 Halo Studios, there's a lot of controversy around that at the moment. So I think, a lot of people, when they refer to the Halo game, they think it's 343. 343 really just sign off on anything that Mantic does. So this is really Mantic's game. They're just borrowing the license. So I'm hoping that people treat it a little bit differently than some of the negative feedback we've seen in the past. We can still have a wicked game and use the new lore at the same time, which we're seeing at the moment. I think Atriox is part of that new lore that we've seen. So I'm not writing the new lore off completely, and I think that they're really cool things looking forward to. But if anyone's got any comments they want to mention or any questions for us, make sure you join our Facebook page, our Discord, our page. We've got a Patreon as well. I chuck in a few bucks if you want. Don't have to. We're going to do this anyway. I'm hoping we eventually will be able to get a really cool logo for MUP Halo, but we'll see. We've also got the YouTube channel as well if you want to leave a comment, and we've got a email address. I think it was manticuniverse@gmail.com. I think that's it. If you got any questions, but yeah, either or, just reach out on Discord. We're going to be doing this again next week, so if you got any questions, flick it our way. And I'm not very good at wrapping up the show, so that's my ramble for the episode. Any final words there, James?
I think that's about covers it. Happy New Year, and stay safe. Stay safe. I'll try that again. Stay safe out there, everyone. Take care.
There you go. You had the last fumble of it, so I can leave gracefully. All right, everyone. Have a good one. See ya.